All right, folks, it's 2 o'clock. Welcome to the Ohio Trans Non-Binary Birth Certificate Update policy update. My name is James. I use he, him pronouns, and I am chair and executive director of TransOhio. And the purpose of this call is to catch everyone up onto what's happening in Ohio in all 88 counties as a result of the new birth certificate policy update, and also to answer your questions. So we're going to spend about 5 minutes each giving you some updates and then open it up to questions for everyone. So if you do have a question, please know this is recorded, but you are able to raise your hands and speak out loud and we'll unmute you at that time. Otherwise, feel free to use the question and answer section at the bottom of your Zoom window, and feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself if you want to have other discussions or have comments to ask that aren't necessarily questions. We'll start off today with Susan Becker with the ACLU. She is of counsel and she uses she, her pronouns. Afterwards, we'll have Kimberly Sue Griffiths with OCTOPUS. She is the executive director. She uses she, her pronouns. With Oliver Licking with Equitas Health. They use they, them pronouns. They are the legal clinic coordinator. And Maya Simek uses she, her pronouns, and she is the legal clinic director at Equality Ohio. At this point, I'd like to open it up to Susan, and we'll start from there. Sound good?
Great. Thank you, James.
Thank
Can you all hear me okay? All right, thank you. So my role is I'm just going to explain a little bit about the background and the ruling that we got that brought us here today. And before I do that, I just want to thank everybody who's on the panel, all my former panelists, all the people who are participating and attending. It's been a really long and arduous road to get to this point. All the work that you all have collectively done and continue to do inspires me every day, and you all brought us here. So thank you so much for that. So where are we today? Well, here's the thing. The Ohio Department of Health at one time did allow transgender individuals to change the gender marker on their birth certificates. It was sometime prior to 2015. And despite all kinds of records requests we did and discovery and litigation, we have never been able to track down that initial policy, nor could we get any good reasons as to why they changed it. The best they would tell us is, well, they read the statutes again in Ohio and thought they didn't have the authority to do it. Something went wrong in ODH at some point, the Ohio Department of Health. We don't know what it was, but our job was to straighten them out. And we did. We looked at state court litigation, ruled that out for some reasons, but eventually we, and by we, I mean ACLU of Ohio, ACLU National, Lambda Legal, and the attorneys, volunteer attorneys at Thompson Hine were the ones that brought the suit. But again, all of you participated. You sent us potential plaintiffs, you sent us theories, we had conversations with you. So this isn't, no one gets the glory here. Everybody gets the glory here, kind of thing. But so in March of 2018, we actually filed a lawsuit in federal court suing the Department of Health, claiming three things. One was an equal protection claim that it makes no sense that it's unconstitutional under the federal constitution to not allow transgender individuals to correct their gender markers on their birth certificates when other people can correct all kinds of information on their birth certificates. In Ohio and elsewhere, for example, people who are adopted can change the name of their birth parents to their adopted parents. And so everyone can change their name. So it made no sense to exclude transgender people. So our argument was, compared to everyone else, transgender individuals are denied equal protection of the law under the federal constitution. We also made a substantive due process privacy argument, arguing that requiring transgender individuals to retain a birth certificate with an incorrect gender marker meant a couple of things. One is, every time you had to show your birth certificate somewhere, you were outed as transgender. So there's a huge identity issue there. And secondarily, that it also put people in direct harm. There's a lot of data out there, and I know a lot of you've lived this experience where when you're outed, then you face actual physical, emotional, all kinds of violence aimed at you. So that was our privacy argument. We also had a compelled speech claim, which quite frankly, I never liked, and the court didn't rule on it, so I'm not going to talk about it. If anyone wants to have a sidebar later, I'll give you my full story on that. But anyway, the whole point is, we did win. And really, there are two decisions you want to focus on if you're looking at these. first, when we filed the lawsuit, of course, the state came back and said, hey, let's dismiss this case. You have no grounds to, let's just throw it out. That's always a dangerous part as a lawyer. You're always worried about that. So the state filed motions to dismiss, we opposed, but we survived that. And we got a really good ruling from the judge in, I think that was September of 2019. The case proceeded, all kinds of discovery was done, experts, reports were exchanged, all of that. And then finally, it seemed like forever, but finally in December of just this past year, the court granted our motion for summary judgment saying, yeah, you're right on the law. And the court ruled on 2 grounds. One was the privacy based on Sixth Circuit law saying, absolutely, it's an invasion of a person's privacy to not allow them change the gender marker on their birth certificate. And secondly, it's an equal protection claim because again, compared to these other comparable classes, other people can change their birth certificate. Cisgender people can change, they can even change the gender marker on their birth certificate if it was incorrectly recorded at birth. So compared to the other classes of individuals who are allowed to change the important information, allowed to correct other important information on their birth certificate, it denies transgender individuals equal protection of the law to not let them do that. Now, these are 2 really good opinions. The opinions denying the motion to dismiss it, the opinion in favor of summary judgment. Here's the issue that why we're all here today, and we'll continue to be fighting this for a while, is the federal court, our federal court, like many federal courts, did not want to tell the Ohio agency what specifically they had to do. The federal courts are not in they do not have the job of laying out specific policies. So for months, we have been negotiating with, the lawyers have been negotiating with the Ohio Department of Health. And here I have to give a huge shout out to attorney Elizabeth Bonham, who took the frontline fire for a very long time negotiating that. But all of that is what brings us here today. So I'm just going to turn it over to the next speaker to talk about where we are today. And maybe we'll loop back to some of the things that happened in the legal case that might help us going forward after that.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate you saying it feels like a long time because, this fight for birth certificates started well before the lawsuit.
Oh,
So this is 10 years in the making here. But next up, let's have Kimberly Sue discuss what the new policy actually is.
Thanks, James. As James indicated with the introductions, my name is Kimberly Sue Griffiths. I use she, her pronouns. I am the executive director of OCTOPUS LLC, which is organizing communities, transgender outreach, promoting united support, based in Columbus, Ohio. My involvement with this is personal in the sense that I am a transgender woman and have been unable to change my gender marker on my birth certificate. So I'm very much looking forward to the same solutions that I'm sure a lot of you are to determine exactly how this is going to happen. So in following up from what Susan was talking about, there was finally in May, there was an expectation that we would get something by June 1st. And so in late May, the Ohio Department of Health came out with a statement as far as the policy goes. And it's fairly short, and I'll read that to you. Court-ordered corrections can be done at any Ohio probate court. It can be used to correct any errors and/or mistakes on the original birth record. In some cases, it can also add any missing information. Please contact the probate court in the county that you reside in for more information. In order to comply with the court decision in Ray versus McLeod, case number 2:18-CV-00272, the Ohio Department of Health will make changes to the sex marker on a birth certificate with a probate court order. So they started out by saying can be done at any Ohio probate court. Well, in looking at the law in Ohio, any Ohio probate court basically comes down to 3 choices. It isn't, you don't have your pick of the 88 counties, but you can choose a court where you currently reside. You can choose a probate court where you were born, or you can choose a probate court where your mother resided when you were born. An example of that may be that, say your mother lived in Delaware County, but you were born in Franklin County and you now live in Licking County. Those would be your choices. Part of the issue was to look at what we should do then as far as moving forward from what the Ohio Department of Health has indicated, which is basically talking to and working with the 88 county Ohio probate courts, which could lead to some issues and complications, since there are 88 county probate courts, and in a lot of cases they're going to be wanting to make their own decisions. So we're hoping that a lot of them also are looking for guidelines. An additional issue, aside from the gender marker change, our gender marker correction issue that we're working on, that I think a lot of you who are interested in changing in name changes, which we have, the legal clinics that we all work at. There is a new version of section 27-1701, which is the application to change name of person notice, and a new version of section 27-1703, which is the contents of application for change of name. So that will become effective August 17th of this year. And one of the major things that, favorable things that came out from these changes is that the applicant now if the applicant has been a bona fide resident of the county for at least 60 days prior to the filing of the application, they can now file for their name change. So we're looking forward to that. People who have been waiting for months and still have 5 or 6 months to go, good news, because you can now, if whatever county you're residing in or whatever county you're residing in, 2 months before that date, then you can file in that county and you don't have to wait out the whole year, the requirement that we've had in the past. So good news for that. So I will turn it over to, I believe Maya is next. But...
Nice. So in other words, the good news is that you have more than one option for a probate court if the probate court where you currently live is refusing to realize that there has been a change in policy. And also the good news is the name change statute is changing. So soon you no longer have to reside in your county for a full year before changing your name, which was the current policy. Soon you'll be able to change your name in a much shorter period of time. We have some other good news from Oliver Licking, who is the legal coordinator of Equitas Health.
Hey everybody, my name is Oliver Licking. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. As James just said, I'm the legal clinic coordinator with Equitas Health. I help set up the legal clinics for all of the name and gender change legal clinics that we do with Equitas Health, TransOhio, OCTOPUS LLC, and Equality Ohio. So I'm here to mention that there is a potential for getting a non-binary gender designation on your birth certificates. Now, for those in the room who maybe need a refresher, non-binary is the gender identity that sits in opposition to the idea that binary gender is the only thing that exists, right? So if you understand binary meaning, like opposite ends, right? We've got male on one end, female on the other. To be non-binary is to sit in a gender identity that is perhaps somewhere in the middle between those two extremes, maybe seeing your gender as a third independent gender from those other two traditional genders, or to express yourself in a fashion of, I do not have a gender. For folks in those situations, and I am also non-binary, finding a way to express your gender in your legal documents is pretty challenging. We have a potential possibly in Ohio for it. For anyone seeking an update in the gender marker change on their birth certificate, you have to go to a probate court and get an order from a judge. If you manage to obtain an order from a judge that designates the gender marker should be an X letter designation or non-binary language like designation for the gender marker, then the Department of Vital Statistics will respect that. We're not clear on how many counties in Ohio might be willing to do this yet, but it is certainly something that's not explicitly prohibited. So if it's something you'd like to try, you're certainly welcome to. It is a thing you might consider doing is obtaining a letter from a doctor or nurse practitioner that you are a patient of, stating, yes, it is in my professional opinion that my patient should have a non-binary or X gender designation on their birth certificate. If if you're not explicitly told by the court to submit this letter when you're applying for the court date, don't do it. There's no reason to give more information than they explicitly ask for, but bringing a physical copy with you to your court date might be a good idea, and a thing to consider. Just again, don't submit things that you're not told you have to submit. If you don't currently have a doctor that you feel like respects your gender as non-binary and you're seeking someone who would be a doctor and nurse practitioner who could write a letter like this for you, TransOhio has a list of doctors in the state of Ohio that you can find at transohio.org. And I'm also just going to plug my organization, Equitas Health. Besides helping with these legal clinics, primarily does healthcare, and we have health clinics with primary care and HRT access and so forth throughout Ohio. We have clinics in the Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati areas, and our doctors and nurse practitioners are so stoked to write these letters. They would love to become your healthcare professional. So just establish as a patient, and you would definitely be able to get letters with us. And I'm
Oliver, is telehealth available?
Telehealth is available. There's questions if we're going to continue to be allowed to do telehealth for those on Medicare or Medicaid, because there's different rules with that, and that might be going away because there has to be like I think the language is there must be a state of emergency active to be able to use that. But we're fighting to allow telehealth for our patients with all healthcare backgrounds, and also we'll help you even if you're uninsured. We'll find a way to help you. And this is a note for Equitas Health, we only work with adult patients, you must be 18. But TransOhio's list probably would include doctors and nurse practitioners that work with all ages.
Thank you. And if you all do need help when it gets time to change the gender marker on your birth certificate, and you feel like your county is not ready to do this yet, or you feel like it's going to be a fight, please do reach out to us at the Name and Gender Change Marker Clinic through TransOhio, Equitas Health, and Equality Ohio. And Equality Ohio also has a separate legal clinic that you can go through that also is helping with birth certificates. And at that note, Maya, can you talk to us about what this procedure actually looks like?
So I'm a visual learner, so I just have this up on the screen for you so that you can see it while we're going through it. So everything that Kimberly said is still being fleshed out by the courts, which is not great for those of us who want to just like get going, right? And so here are some of the things that they are considering using the statute that is going to be changing birth certificates, which James is going to go into why some of these are problematic. But for those of you who have had your name changes already completed, you know what it's like and kind of what that requirement looked like, right? And so you would go to court and you take your documentation, and you may or may not have had to have published a notice saying that your name was being changed. And then you probably went to a hearing. And then during the hearing, the judge said, ask some questions. Why do you want to change your name? What's going on? And then they're like, great, granted. Hopefully this is something of the procedure that you went through. Since the judges have discretion based on what is going on right now for the gender marker change, each court has the ability to decide which of these factors they want to do. So that means right now we see that a hearing is not required, but a judge can decide that they want a hearing. We see that publication is not required, but a judge can decide if they want to have publication, which is completely something that we are opposed to because it would out someone for their gender identity. There is the ability for someone to do a self-attestation, meaning that I'm like, I obviously know my gender, right? Like I know how I identify. We all know how we identify. It should not be that we need to go any further than saying like, hi, I'm Maya and I use she and her pronouns, identify as female. Someone should be like, check, that's great. However, a judge can also require additional documentation from folks that say what their gender is and verifying it. So think right now, the driver's license, the DMV form, where your gender marker can be changed, but it has to be signed off by someone that ranges from a social worker to a medical doctor. We're thinking that if something above and beyond self-attestation is going to be required, it will probably be along the lines of a form like that is our hope. And After that, after going through the hearing, if a hearing is required, or checking the forms, if they're just going to check the forms, the judge is going to take all of the information and flips it over to the Ohio Department of Health. So that is kind of like procedurally what is going to be happening, but we're waiting for each different county to roll out what their expectations are going to be. So some people, if you have not changed your gender marker, but you have already changed your name, then here we go. What we're looking at here is how do you get this done? So what we're encouraging folks to do is the clinic that is with the collaborative of organizations you just heard about, TransOhio, Equitas, OCTOPUS, Equality Ohio, Living with Change. We all are having monthly clinics on the second Wednesday of the month, which is this week, but we are full this week. So we are having another clinic on June 26th because we want to make sure we have access to be there and ask any questions or answer any questions for you. So you can come to one of those clinics, or you can reach out to any of us and see how we can help assist. But if you're trying to do this on your own and you're interested, I would suggest first and foremost, looking at the probate court that you, one of the 3 places that Kimberly spoke about, right? So where you were born, where your mother resided, or where you're currently living, see which has the easiest requirements, right? As soon as they start popping up, you can see like who's gonna cost more, who's gonna require more information from you, who's just generally like easiest to work with. Go there, right? That's going to make the most sense. And then from there, what other forms and guidance do they need? Then the next thing you're looking at is costs, right? So how much does it cost? Because each of the courts are able to, and for every court that has gone through, they're requiring money. And so if they're requiring money, do you have the money to make that happen? And if you don't, we have financial assistance for you. How rad is that? And so this is a shout out to both Living with Change, which is a wonderful organization based out of Hamilton and Cincinnati, who is helping with funding resources, as well as TransOhio, who's been like our funding provider for the past like decade. So, I mean, if you need financial assistance and you are 300% or below the federal poverty level, let us know. Do not let this be a barrier for you. And then you're going to go about the process of filing the forms. And if you get stuck or you're really nervous and you want someone to go and have an attorney with you, we can help you at Equality Ohio. Now, if you haven't done your gender marker and your name change, and you need to do both, I want to flag this for everyone, like 30 stars hyphens. The reason being that name changes and gender marker changes have 2 separate requirements for publication. So when you file your name change, right now there is a requirement for you to publish, and we can sometimes get that waived, right? Because there's a credible fear about being outed of changing your name. So there are times when we can ask the court to waive that publication, but generally speaking, it's a requirement. Whereas right now, there is no blanket requirement for gender marker changes. And based on the case law, the way this case unfolded, it was literally stated that having people identify their need for a gender marker change is going to out them and is inherently dangerous. So we are of the belief, and we're putting out all the positive energy, that the courts are going to take that and follow suit and not require publication. So if you lump them together, you may have a publication requirement that you didn't intend for. And so I'm just highlighting that for you. If you have questions as you're looking at things, just make sure that you consult with anyone that's here so that we get you on the right track and you don't inadvertently have any information out there that you don't want out there. So that's basically the long and the short of it. Either way, if you need assistance, let us know, and we are here to help. And so I'm going to send it back over to James.
Awesome. Thank you, folks. Like Maya said, TransOhio is here to help. So if you have any questions as you're going through this, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are working to figure out what all the policies are in the different probate courts, but some concerns we have as an organization, and me personally also as an attorney, is we have 88 different probate courts. We have 88 different counties, and up to judicial discretion, the judges and magistrates are able to ask for different proofs or evidence. So it may vary county to county in not just the costs, but the procedures. So what kind of documents you need to bring with you when you file, and also to your hearing if you have a hearing. Sometimes when there's a hearing, there is a notice requirement. Sometimes the hearing doesn't require notice. It's just a quick hearing with you and the magistrate. It takes 5 minutes. There are some counties who are already just basically rubber stamping these changes, and what you need to bring them is the application to amend birth certificate from the Ohio Department of Health's website. You just fill that out, have it notarized, and bring a passport or a state ID that shows your gender marker on it, and they're just stamping it and letting you walk out with the order, which is the counties I would want to push folks to. But I'm going to hesitate on shouting out certain counties because by the time you watch this next week, the procedures may have changed and there may be more counties doing that. But we did have a question about Hamilton County specifically. And I want to shout out Living with Change, working in Hamilton County, who has agreed to help pay for anyone's birth certificate fees if they're unable to pay for it themselves. So one big concern with this new procedure is the fees vary wildly, and it can be, you know, $10 in some counties, and in others it's already $75. And in some counties they're still deciding because they don't have a procedure set up yet. So if you meet certain criteria and you cannot afford the cost of updating your birth certificate, reach out and we can connect you with Living with Change, and they will help pay for that. On the same note, if you are changing your name and you cannot afford it, reach out. TransOhio and Living with Change have money for that. I don't want anyone feeling like you have to put this off any longer. We are so excited this policy is here and it's happening. I just wish that it were a little more, I feel well thought out. And what happened really here is ODH left it up to the different courts, which was a good political move, but it wasn't a good move in terms of the lived reality of this, where, you know, there are certain folks who can't help where they were born, and they may be living in places that aren't necessarily friendly, and those people are waiting and moving to other counties so that they can file for a gender marker change. And that is not the way this should be happening. No person living in Ohio should have to physically move their residence to another county just so they can change their birth certificate. Because, you know, you can change your, like Susan said, you can change your birth certificate for a number of other reasons. Gender already was included if it was incorrectly recorded, or if there's a intersex condition. So this just makes no sense to me. But here we are, and we're working it out, and you know, the courts are learning too. So this may take some time, and the policies may change over time. I know Hamilton County specifically has the incorrect opinion that because the law hasn't changed, only ODH's policy has changed, that they do not have to issue probate court orders for gender marker changes, and they're only going to do name changes. That's not a legal standard. That is inaccurate, and I don't know where that's coming from. But, you know, they're going to learn, and TransOhio, Equality Ohio, and all of our other partner organizations are working with these courts and the magistrates involved, hoping to get some changes, hoping to do some education, because, you know, not so long ago, we had some of these same counties who were asking for therapist letters and gender surgery letters for name changes. And if you think to yourself, that's outrageous, it was then too. It's even more so now. And my most sincere hope is that this will go the way of our Ohio driver's license and state IDs, and it's going to be one standard form that we all fill out. I would prefer it be on self-attestation, which means you yourself decide what your gender is, you write it down and you sign it, and that's it. But it may take some time to get there.